Hi everyone. Hope you're okay. Welcome to a lunchtime session. Hope you've grabbed your lunch and ready to kick back and have a listen to about PMO CVs really, about wanting to do something that I know many people, have struggles with in terms of CVs and things like that. So, it makes sense that because we're a training company, we, obviously training and qualifications, of course, help in the hunt for a new role. But just a little about me. I'm Lindsay Scott, and the reason why I'm here, I suppose, qualified to talk to you about CVs specifically is previously I worked for almost 20 years as running a recruitment business that focused specifically on PMO and PM. So I've advised a lot of people over the years about what makes a good CV for people that are working in this field, and hopefully how some tips and things to help you stand out and get hired. It's something that I still do advise on. It's part of PMO learning. We have some coaching options. So I do sessions with people that might be looking specifically for some advice around the whole CV stuff. And I'm pleased to say that it still all works. It's great to see people, utilize it and obviously help them to find positions. So that's me. That's what I'm about. And so let's find out what we're going to be doing today then. So I've got, it's really interesting to kind of do a session on CVs that will make sense, be useful, have takeaways for people, because we're all different. Obviously, we've all got different nuances in the experiences that we have. So hopefully, I've got something here that's useful to you, but bearing in mind that we're all different. But, generally when we ask for questions and things, we've got some questions in that we're very specific about, I really need some help on my profile or my CV and things like that. Of course, we can't get into those kind of things, but I have put a selection of your questions in, and you can take a vote on the one that you want me to answer, so we can try and get a consensus of what we all find useful. Just to let you know also, this is being recorded, which means that it will be available afterwards. So if there's anything in here that you just want to have another look at, you'll be able to do that possibly next week. It'll be ready and it'll be available. Okay, so if we're sitting comfortably, let's begin then. Let's have a look at CV essentials first of all. And what I wanted to do here is just look at what recruiters and hiring managers are actually looking for. Having been a recruiter for a long time previously, you kind of get used to seeing hundreds of CVs, and you're looking for certain things across the many applications that you might get. But I just wanted to before we get into that, just a reminder that what we're talking about here are CVs are essentially a marketing document. They are about selling yourself. As much as we might hate that terminology, that's essentially what it is, that it's there to do. You're laying out exactly what your accreditations, your experience, your skills, what you're going to bring to the table. It's all there. And it's what kind of want to remember, that sometimes when we're writing these things, is to remember that it is it's you're writing it for a particular audience, and I want to talk about those audiences now. So, two audiences when you come in to look at writing and putting together your CV, and also the applications that you might be making, which can be difficult. We know that it's because you've got two audiences, and the first one, it'll be those that don't know PMO particularly well at all. So what are they doing? So they don't know PMO as well as you do. Will not know PMO as well as a line manager will do, or a PMO manager or a PMO director, somebody who's actually looking to hire you into the team. We don't know the nuances. They're often like the kind of first line, and this can be either a recruiter sometimes, or it will be so maybe somebody from the HR department that's working against a role profile or a job advert, and that's as much as they know. So it's obvious that one of the first things that they tend to do is look at keywords. is that the kind of sense checking of, I've got this CV in front of me, I've got this job profile or this advert, is it matching up? Have we got the right kind of keywords in there? Are they saying similar things? It's because they don't know the ins and outs of. You may be using certain words for things and they don't know. You don't know what they are. They could be using acronyms. Got no idea. If it's not in their job advert or their profile, it's not matching up for them. The second one is, does it look right? In other words, there is a first impressions that people have, and this because you're going through many different CVs when you're applying for a role. From their side, there might be 100 people that have got to have a look at. So the first impressions really do count. And they tend to look at them in a certain way, a CV. They'll open it up, they'll look at the top, see the name, they'll have a glance at the profile, just again, this kind of keyword scanning that people just naturally do, and they do it in a split second. Then we go down into the career history and start to look at what it is that you've done. So in terms of the role title, and maybe a little scan again of what the role it is that you've been doing. And then if things are looking right, that's when they'll go back up to the top of the CV, and I'm going to read this through properly now from the top to the bottom. So again, it's that kind of first thing that people do when they open a CV, when they know they've got a lot to get through, but doing that initial scan. So again, it's not personal. If you get a knockback, sometimes it's because it doesn't look right, and we want to make sure that it does look right. And we can talk about a few of those things as we go through this session. And the last thing, some of the basics. So where are you? If they're looking for a particular role that's in a certain location, they're going to be looking at some of the basics. So is this person in the location? Are they out of the country? In which case that might make it a little bit more difficult for us in terms of being able to take this person on. They will look at some of the basics, and they might put you to one side if you're not, ticking some boxes on some of those basic things. So straight away, some of the first impressions from people that are not really entirely sure about what the role of the PMO is, or what it is they're actually truly doing that first line sifting for, you've kind of got to play the game. However, we've got that second audience, and that second audience is somebody that obviously knows PMO, and that's where things do start to shift a little bit more in terms of what they're looking for when they open up that CV. So they're looking for that core role and responsibility. So there's, when you're setting out your career history, what it is that you've actually been doing, where you've been working, what role you were performing, what kind of tasks and activities. So does it look like a PMO person? Now, you will be surprised at the number of applications that they will get that will be from people that don't look like PMO people. And generally, they might be people that are perhaps coming from a kind of IT background, so quite a technical role, or indeed they may be project managers or look like project managers. You do tend to get a lot of project managers that go for PMO roles. For whatever reasons, it can be that that they're struggling to find project management roles and think that PMO might be an easier one to get into. But there you go. So they're looking at those core roles and responsibilities to see whether it does actually look like a PMO person that's in front of me in this CV. They'll be looking for the details on the how. They're looking for the role that you perform. Now, this is the thing where often if you're working within a PMO team, and you might talk about that team rather than the individual kind of thing, tasks and activities that you were doing. So they're looking for that and trying to understand what role it is that you are actually been performing, rather than it could be a more generic role around the PMO. So they're looking for the role that you performed. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in terms of the kind of details and the common mistakes that people might make around that. So it's getting a good idea. When you know PMO, you get a chance to, you really understand that when somebody's talking about reporting, in my head, if I know PMO and PMO manager, I'll be expecting to see certain things around that kind of role and responsibility around reporting and insights and analysis. So again, you're looking for that kind of sense checking. And you're also, the final point there about fitting the story is that it's about the fit of the role that you're going for, fits and marries up with what you're representing yourself as on the CV as well. Again, maybe it looks like that this role might be a step back for you, or actually it might look like it's too senior for you. or we've said before that, you know, it might be actually that you're more of a project manager type role than you are a PMO. Anything that doesn't fit the story gives an excuse to put it to one side. It's because there'll be lots of other CVs that are fitting the story, and that's where people want to put their attention first. Okay, so sometimes if it looks like that you're not fitting the story and there's no explanation as to why you're applying for that role, you'll get put to one side. Okay, so we're straight into it in terms of, you know, just thinking about some of the different audiences that we're trying to write for. And again, do we know who's going to be picking it up? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're trying to write for both audiences at the same time. So bear in mind both points that I've showed to you, is that you'll need to think about how you incorporate both of these things within your CV. Okay, so we talked about skills highlight on the synopsis for this session and why you've joined us today, about how to highlight skills even when you don't think you have enough. I'll tell you right now that you do have enough. I think sometimes it's about understanding what we're talking about in terms of skill, because there's many different types of skill. And sometimes it might be a case of you have transferable skill, having not necessarily been able to do something that might be in that particular job advert. Okay, so there's a little difference. So there's a lot of skills. And these are just some of the skills that you would find on a PMO person's career. And there's a lot of them. So actually, it's probably not so worrying about I've got a lack of skill. It's probably more about trying to highlight the right kinds of skill for the role that you're going for. So how do we understand and which bits do we bring to the fore? It is very much about the opportunity that you're going for. And I can't advise more, but it's about the tailoring of it, because you're slightly different opportunities. It may be a PMO analyst role, but it's going to be different in every organization, and they might have a different spin on what is important in that particular PMO analyst role that may not be as important in one of the other jobs that you're looking at. So it really is about being able to highlight the ones that are most closely aligned, and people don't tend to do it, which is highly frustrating. It's certainly if you're going for an advert where you're seeing it on LinkedIn or you're seeing it on one of the job boards, and you do have enough detail in order to be able to make some kinds of concessions in your resume or CV that will bring out some of the skills more to the fore than others. Okay, so it is about which skills that you want to highlight. So let's have a think about, well, what is it that you're actually selling? Because you have got a lot to sell, and then the skills just being one of them. Yeah, so we worry about whether we're putting across the kind of skills that we have that we're going to bring to the table in this new role. Actually, we can think about our experience is going to be the thing that is the most important. Actually, for many organizations, they do tend to look for people who have done similar things in the past, because it makes it easier for them to bring somebody in that's going to be able to hit the ground running. You know, so obviously from an organization point of view, they're looking at the experience to see whether there's the similarities are there, or it feels like there's enough there for them to build on to bring you in. We've obviously got a lot of knowledge, and knowledge again is a harder thing sometimes to put into a CV, but the knowledge is the underpinning things that we have in order to be able to do our job of PMO. And that might be things like our delivery methodology experiences. It might be the tools that we use, or the particular processes or frameworks, and those kind of things that we know that we need and underpin the role in PMO in order to be able to carry out the job that's been asked of us. We've also got to think about the training. Of course, PMO learning, we're a training organization. Of course, we're going to advocate for training being a really important part of it. However, but people, organizations are looking for people that do care about their own development and keeping up to date with what's going on, and to think about how they address their gaps and all of that kind of good stuff. Some of it might lead to qualifications, and I think you all know just how important qualifications are on a CV. Again, think about that audience of people that don't know PMO. They will look at the qualifications, and what will they look at? Most of the time, they're going to ask for project management ones. That's because of what it is that they know. So you will often find that there'll be Prince 2 required, or might have your APMP, or you might be PMI, PMP, all project management ones. But of course, you're a PMO person. You need to make sure that you've got some PMO ones on there as well. Again, the most popular one in terms of CV land is P3O because it's been around the longest and it's the one that most people have got used to seeing, whether they know PMO or don't know PMO. However, we know that there are other things out there that are also important for you in your own development. So you've got to make that decision about what it is that you're doing and what are you using these qualifications for, because we can't ignore the fact that people do look for and want to understand how are you professionally developing in the role that you're doing now, because they want to have the best people working for them. They want people that are trained and qualified. So there's also the tool sets, because there's a myriad of things that PMO people will be using, whether that be planning tools, whether it will be the basics around things like Excel, whether it's going to be, some of the newer types of tools around maybe like AI, maybe these things like the accounting systems, whatever it might be. There's also, an important thing for people when they're doing that kind of check-in. We're looking at the CV, are they hitting some of these points? You need to make sure that also that the tool sets that you're using are also prominent. There's also, what you're also selling is behaviors, which are incredibly difficult to get across on a resume, because that's what you're hoping to bring to the table when you get the foot through the door and you've actually got the interview. That's when that really comes into the fore, as does also the mindset. However, there is a way for you to be able to pull in some of the things that, that demonstrate, the way that you do something, how you get some buy-in, but also in terms of your mindset. For me, when I think about a mindset around PMO professionals, I want to know, do you get involved in some kind of extracurricular type stuff, for example? Are you really invested in what your job is around the whole kind of PMO and the industry that you're working within? Those are some of the things that you can think about actually getting into the CV that bring a little bit more of the personal and the behavioral. And I want to come back to that, because I've slotted a bit in here about AI and about whether you should be utilizing that or not as well. Okay, so I want to concentrate on the profile, because I think there's a load of stuff I can go into, but there are additional help for you in terms of if you really want help from beginning to the end on the CV, and I'll come to that at the towards the end of the session. But a profile, the bit at the top, is the bit when I said that most people, when they first open up a CV, are scanning, and they'll scan and they'll glance in to see what's in that profile. And we came up with this kind of set criteria as what you want to include in this profile. Okay, so in terms of the kind of top things people want to know is the job title, the qualifications, where you've been working, what domain you're working within. And domain means if you're working in, say, HR, or it's the IT department, or it's business strategy, whatever it might be within the business. Any specialisms that you have within the whole kind of PMO space, and then also some good stuff. In other words, things that you think, really should make you stand out across the competition that might also be going for a particular role. So what we wanted to show you is just an example of how that might be put together. So we've got here that we've got the qualifications, and sometimes leading with the qualifications can be better than leading with the job title. It doesn't really matter. You're putting in there experience wise and where you've been working in terms of what sectors. So you imagine you're applying for a job that's in the retail sector. You've currently been working in finance sector. You want to make that move back into retail. You want to make sure that retail is somewhere in there. That keyword needs to be in there somewhere. Then we're getting into just to highlight a snapshot about what it is that that you're doing. So whether you're somebody that is kind of like PMO manager level that wants to set up PMOs, you might be talking about that. If you're an analyst, you might be going into the detail of how particular PMO services that you're, that you take responsibility for. On this particular one, this is about a PMO manager level. So here we've got some stuff in there about PMO setup and management. And then we've got some bits in there about what you're actually doing and what your responsibilities are. And also some bits in terms of some of the standout kind of keywords that you would expect to see in this kind of CV, which is about standards and frameworks and things like that. So again, it's a short, It's a succinct, it's all factual. There is no bits in here that are about you as an individual. I'm a good team player, all of that kind of what I call kind of fluff pieces. They're words that are not going to help make the kind of shortlist at this point. Yeah. Remember the way that people are reading these are scanning. Look at how many kind of PMO words we've got in there for the start. It's going to catch the attention and it's going to make people want to read on. Okay. So that's the profile. That's the best advice I can give to you in terms of what goes in it. So if there's one thing that all of you can take away, is to go away and to have a think about that profile and whether it's very truly factually based, it's stuffed with the keywords, and it's kind of following that formula. So AI, right. So this has come onto the scene. It's got loads of benefits for people that are looking for work right now and wanting to do stuff and use it with their CV. These are some of the things that we played around with, and I absolutely think it's fantastic for. You can't get away from the ability to push your CV through something like ChatGPT and ask it to pick out, grammar, to take out unwanted words, to pick up on those spelling mistakes, how to make a sentence more succinct, those kind of ideas. It's wonderful for it. It's also good for giving you some ideas on formatting. So one of the things, if you're wanting to lay out things in a certain way, or if you want to make something more prominent, asking ChatGPT or any kind of AI how you could maybe readjust and change the way that it's formatted, it will be able to do that. I really like it for the fact that it can order some of your thoughts. So, for example, if you're going for a particular job ad, you can put that job ad into ChatGPT and you'll be able to ask it questions of the job ad, which will allow you to then do a comparison against the CV that you've got versus the job ad and get it to give you some ideas about how you might think about how you might write in a certain way, how you might choose to order things. So some of the most important bits might be at the top, which comes to the tailoring bit. And I think this is what's fantastic. It used to be, take maybe 10 minutes to look at some tailoring. So you see in a job advert, I want to just change this CV really quickly. How can I do that? Well, now you can just essentially put that job ad in, you can put your current CV in, and you said you're looking for some minor adjustments that you can make to your resume against the role that you're particularly looking to apply for right now. Get it to give you that advice and for you to actually make that judgment call on what it's doing. It's saving time, but it's also making you think differently about actually, yeah, I've not noticed that in the job ad, that actually it was asking for this before this. Then maybe I want to bring this up and maybe I want to put some of this stuff into the profile as well. Yeah. So again, it's a useful tool to have. So AI in the negatives, because there were some. It's devoid of personality. And ultimately, this is a document that is about you. I don't advocate people putting and getting it to create a CV completely, because it has a propensity to use a lot of words that are unnecessary, and word salads, as I call them, is just not really getting into the nitty gritty. I certainly wouldn't get a CV AI to rewrite my entire CV, because I think it will be stripping out some of the personality and some of the wording that you choose to use and the way that you choose to write it. Interesting question there on the chat that you've seen applications where you have to declare if you've used AI or not. Is it a positive or a negative? It's interesting about what the use of AI means. Does it mean that you've used the AI to write a CV in its entirety, or you're using it for things like the odd spot check or doing the comparisons, or that kind of thing? Because ultimately, if you're using ChatGPT or any other AI tool to actually write your CV, chances are that if any applications that you're making that are doing checks on applications, because they can check, you can tell, and there are also systems out there that will tell you on a percentage basis how much they think it's been created by AI. So if that is the case, use caution. Just use it for bits, because it does need editing. If you're going to do that kind of stuff, I would use it for certain bits of it, not for rewriting all of it. And again, it can be giving you hallucinations, as they call it in the AI world, which is just making stuff up. So if you're using it on some of the kind of roles and responsibility type things, it can be putting some things in there that actually don't make any real sense. And if you're putting some in there that you don't understand yourself, that's where you're going to get into a few problems. So again, I think it's got a load of users. I mean, I love analyzing job adverts with it. I think it's been really useful for that. And certainly giving you things like on the other end, when you get maybe an interview, helping you to think about and order some thoughts in terms of questions, that kind of stuff, or maybe making you help you to think of some particular scenarios that you might want to bring up into an interview. I think it's got lots of uses all the way through the recruitment process, but just use it carefully when it comes to actually creating the CV, because we don't want it to strip out anything that makes it you. Okay, so mistakes. We've got some common mistakes that send applications straight to the rejection pile. And I want to concentrate on my number one that I also saw a lot in my experiences as a recruiter. And this is a mistake that I'm going to demonstrate exactly what this means. And you'll be like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's a failure to show the skills used in the roles and responsibilities. We sometimes in project management as a whole focus too much on what we're doing. So, about maybe writing a report or putting together a log. We don't think too much about the skills that are required in order to be able to do that particular task and activity. Certainly for PMO roles, it's important. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for you, like the how you're doing some stuff, mainly because some of the things that you may have done in your experience to date might not be something that they do in their current role, that they're recruiting for. So what they're trying to work out is, well, would they be able to do it though? Based on stuff they've done before, I can see, oh, they've done something similar. Yeah. So, for example, let me show you. This is a book standard line that you'd probably find in any kind of CV for a PMO analyst. So here's all about the kind of key governance forums and stuff like steering committees and program boards and just pulling them all together. Look at how you can improve it and bring out the skill, because these are the kind of things that actually people want to get a bit of a more of a feel for. Yeah. So now I'm bringing in some of the stuff like stakeholder engagement, about documentation, all of that kind of thing. This also allows people that when you've got to the interview stage, it gives them an opportunity to ask you a specific question about, well, tell me a little bit more about the stakeholder engagement that you would do, through this kind of task and activity. You're almost leading people into, ask me about it. I'll tell you how I did it and what approaches I made. Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that makes people stand out. You can see the difference that these two things are making. You're telling me what you're doing, but you're telling me how you're doing it. Okay. So what other mistakes have we got? Well, sometimes a CV, PMO CV will not be covering some of what I would call the core competencies. Regardless of the job you're going for in PMO, there's always an expectation that you will see some of the same things over and over again. There's a core role around PMO, regardless if it's an administrator or a director. There are certain things that we're doing. And some of those things can be missing in the CV, especially if it's been asked for in the job advert or the profile that you're recruiting for. And then on the same side of that is also not including any kind of behavioral insights as well. And again, it's about understanding perhaps what some of the behavioral insights are in the first place, because you're like, Lindsay, what does that mean? Well, one of the things I just wanted to just bring into the fore, and it's one of the guides, one of the textbooks we use on the essentials courses, is that when we talk about core competencies, this book is not bad at being able to help organize your thoughts, because it does list out all the core competencies, knowledge, skills, and behaviors that you would expect to see in people that are working in PMO roles. If you've not come across it before, I'd love to know whether you have or you haven't in chat. If you're still with me and you're still, listening away, have you got your hands on this before? Because this is the kind of thing that really does help to pull together a CV. It's making sure that you're covering off some of the basics that you'd expect to see. And the way that I advise a lot of people to do this when we're doing kind of like CV advice when I'm doing one-to-ones with people is how do I make sure that I'm including the things that I should be including? You know, how do I make sure that I'm not forgotten things? And in the competency framework, not only do it talk about each of these competencies, but it gives you some of the ideas of, well, these are some of the frameworks that are used. These are some of the keywords around some of these things. And it's a really good for to kind of remind you, but oh gosh, yeah, actually, I've not done this for a couple of years, but I want to make sure that's in the resume because actually I know how to do it, I've just not been doing it recently. So there's this, it's a really good way to jog. One of the other ways that I get people to do it is with a blank piece of paper and give me some boxes. And in the what are considered to be your top 10 in terms of the core areas. And each one of those 10, I then want something in those boxes. These are good for getting you to think from rather than, I think I've got my CV sorted, put the CV to one side, start from a blank piece of paper again, and have I got things, have I got stuff to add in here against some of these, what I've considered to be core. And you may do this also with the job advert. So you may do the 10 box on the job advert, the 10 box on you, and then you've kind of got that, making sure that you're covering off against some of the things that that job advert's asking for. So you can do it from a kind of area point of view, the competency areas like these, or for people that are working at project program level, you may choose to do it through the life cycle. So what kind of roles and responsibilities do you do at each one of the stages within a project or program life cycle? So again, it depends on the kind of PMO person you are, but this is getting you to think of, you know, what are some of the things that I've been doing? I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting stuff because we're not great at remembering to update CVs when we're doing stuff. Sometimes we're not touching them for about 3 or 4 years. So again, good exercise. So for this one, you've also got that final column. You're wondering what COE is, Centre of Excellence. You will be doing some other work, which is not necessarily life cycle based, but is more about the standards, the processes, the templates, all of that kind of good stuff. So again, just simple, but sometimes simple approaches are the best and the ones that you're more likely to remember. So hopefully you'll find that useful. So other mistakes we've got is assuming that the reader understands the context. We'll see a number of PMO CVs that get launched straight into the roles and responsibilities, and I've got no clue what kind of PMO it is. Yeah, it makes a big difference. You know, if you tell me a little bit about where you are. So if you look at the career history for most of us, we've got the job title on there and the dates. We go straight into perhaps maybe, you know, I'm working with this organization and then into the roles and responsibilities. Concentrate on that bit before you just go into roles and responsibilities. Just tell me a little bit about the business. Tell me about its, you know, it's an organization that's got a portfolio of 200 projects, or, you know, I'm working within a PMO that is focused specifically on this program. And, you know, do I give it more detail in terms of the numbers? Now, I've got a question here. I've been advised to show the financial value of portfolios and projects you've worked on. In my sector, budgets are small compared to banks and large companies, so I wonder if it's better not to mention them. It really does depend, and I know that's probably not the answer you want, but it does. If you think that you're going for a work within a certain sector where the numbers are important, so again, you know, if you're moving from one kind of organization into another, perhaps government into private, it's kind of given as that the budget really doesn't make much difference because the circumstances and the situation, the contexts are changing because you're changing sector. Sometimes a way around that might be to, you know, that you give an outline, maybe if it's a PMO role that you're going for, that's more about line managing, you can talk about that kind of stuff. I don't think it makes much difference on a resume to actually, if you put your numbers in or not. There's a chance that when you go to the interview, obviously that kind of stuff will come out at the interview with some direct questions. I think if you give a good enough account and a good enough giving it context in terms of what you're kind of working within, I think people will recognize that actually, yes, the budget's going to be quite small on this because he's working within the X sector. Yeah, so it's an example here about not understanding what context you're working within can be really, really difficult to make a call depending on what it is that you're going for job wise. Again, if a job advert is asking for that specifically, I would think that you would have to include it. But how many job ads really ask specifically for that kind of thing? So I would err on the caution, depending on what kind of role it is that you're going for and what kind of sector it is. And then just finally, just for your question, I might as well just, I'm looking at it in chat right now. I've been advised to write bullets rather than sentences for clarity. Downside, it makes the CV longer. What would you advise? Bullets are always the best. Yeah, we've got to remember that we're not doing chapter and verse. There is that ability to do more stuff on your LinkedIn profile, for example, because you will be, in this day and age, you need a LinkedIn profile that goes with the CV, and you should have that URL at the top of your CV. If you want to write more, if you can do that on LinkedIn, but yeah, it's succinct. You need enough white space in the CV to make it look really clear. So yeah, doesn't make the CV longer. It just means that you need to be better at writing your bullet points. Yeah. So short, succinct does the job. Not using the keywords. And again, so many people will be like, why have I been bounced for this particular role? And it's like, well, we're asking for X, Y, and Z, and I can't see this anywhere in the CV. Where can you go with that? We've got to bear in mind, I've got 100 CVs to get through. I've got to be able to get a short list together. And the easiest way to do that is going to be looking at some, am I seeing the keywords? Does it look right? All of those kind of things. So think really carefully and don't stuff it, but just make sure you sprinkle enough in the right places. Again, comes from the advert, looks at the profile or whatever it is that you're, applying for your job against. And not tailoring based on the ad. I've talked about this, and it's just one of those jobs. It takes minutes and it pays dividends. It absolutely does. So if you really feel like, I'm just going to put the same CV out there and not change it, if you start to make some tailoring, give it a week, you'll start to see some changes. Okay. So talking about tailoring then, I want to get onto that, about tailoring your CV for different roles. So this is quite a hard one to do because I've got no idea who's on this call and what bits they're going to find interesting. But essentially, your tailoring is going to be across different parts of your CV. It makes sense that you would do some tailoring on your profile because that's the bit we've said that people read it right at the top. It makes sense that you might do some reordering of skills to bring some skills in, or make some more prominent at the top. I've always really liked skills section on a CV where it might be double columned, so you can give me quite a bit in terms of keywords and things like that. So I always quite like that kind of layout. Certainly key achievements, there should be at least 2 or 3 in there, because those are the bits that you really want to highlight, the stuff, the good stuff that applies to the role that you're applying for. Of course, there might be some things you'll change on the job history. Again, that tends to be done by the reordering of what's in your roles and responsibilities. You bring some up to the top and move some down, or whatever, based on the job that you're going for. The qualifications, again, it might be a reordering job. And indeed, other information. A lot of people don't include other information. It's almost like, we do the bog standards, but actually other information, I think, for PMO people gives an opportunity to bring in some external stuff. Certainly things like voluntary type things you might do, or memberships of professional bodies, or things that you get involved in. Anything that kind of brings a little bit more personality into it. I've always really liked to see those kind of things. And I know interviewers do, because it's always one of those things that when you go into an interview, if there is something that's a little off talking point, something that can make a connection to somebody, is all the better. So I just wanted to have a think about this. We've got 2 types of people. So on the right hand side, we've got the lady here that's permanent. So she's a permanent PMO person. And then on the right hand side, we've got on the left hand side, we've got this gentleman that is more of a contract or freelancing. And again, just wanting to just give some appreciation to how some of the key differences might appear in your CV, and which of these bits that you might kind of focus on. So let's have a look at it. I've never done this kind of layout before, so I'm hoping that it'll work. So we're going to look at profile, the roles, the history, and some of the key skills and kind of the differences between them. So let's see if it works. You can be my guinea pigs. So for the lady, she was the permanent one. A profile is going to be very different to the contractor freelancer because of the focus of what it is that you're trying to do. You're generally tending to want to put in there that, that you're not somebody who's going to be job hopping, but you are looking for, something that demonstrates that you're a long-term kind of PMO professional employee, that you are, certainly when it comes to PMO manager roles, they're interesting because we have kind of two types of PMO managers. We have ones that really love going into organizations and setting them up, but we don't tend to be the people that will carry on running them. So in this profile for the permanent one, say for PMO manager, you want to be able to show and get across that you are the person that is the kind of long-term, you enjoy building the team culture, so you think back to our profiles when we were being quite clear about some of them, maybe adding in some of the good stuff. That's the kind of thing that you want to try and get in there. Yeah. Whereas for the freelancer, the contractor, we know that we bring them in and we want somebody that gets down to a job and delivers quickly. Yeah, we might want some breadth of experience as well. We might want something that demonstrates that you can work with different frameworks, different tools, different types of people, whatever it might be. But here is core is about, you come in, you hit the ground running, you do the job and you go. Yeah. So again, it has a different feel. So between a permanent and the freelancer. The roles then, of course, the way that I listed out is that a contractor is going to have a list of assignments. The pages might run up to 3 or 4. Groupings under employees, if you're a permanent, can be shorter because you're not doing chapter and verse. As I've said, you can use LinkedIn profile. You can also use a LinkedIn profile as a contractor, no problem. But what generally people want to be able to see with contracting and freelancing, it's just as important to see that you are used to this role and that you're not somebody that is going to be expecting to be there for 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be, that you're not a long-term contractor in the same place. And so for some people, from some organizations, it's important to be able to see, what is it that they've been doing? What impact have they been making for organizations over a short period of time? That's the kind of thing that they're wanting to see. Employees for permanent roles are wanting to see that kind of loyalty, the kind of growth that you've had within some of the longer term roles that you've had. But the CV does tend to be shorter because you're not listing out lots of assignments. From a history point of view, then it's about, from a permanent point of view, you want to understand like that kind of impact you've made, value you've made in your role over time. Contractors, it's an immediate impact. It's about immediate impact and outcomes and things that you've actually delivered. And again, the wording changes. We want to be able to see those outcomes on CVs. So, this is the assignment that you were taking on. This was the objective of it. I went in and I did this, and this was the outcome. Bang. With the permanent roles, you're looking for something that is more about the embedding, the continuous improvement, the refresh, the bringing new things into it, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a very different feel to the way that you write about it and the kind of adjectives that you're using when you put together your CV. And with key skills, again, with freelancing tends to be very, short and sharp. I'm using these kind of tools. These are the frameworks. These are the delivery methods that I'm using. These are the kind of toolkit that I will bring into your organization to get these things done. When it comes to more of a permanent role, you're looking for a more balanced view, that we do want to start to see some of the kind of softer skills side of it, rather than just purely frameworks and tools and all that kind of thing. So we want to understand a little bit more about, things like the stakeholder engagement, conflict management, influencing skills, strategic approaches to how you might do things, that kind of thing. So again, it changes the way that it looks. So if you look at a couple of examples in terms of the contractor and the permanent versions, it's very much different kinds of way of writing, and putting some kind of short time frames on for the contractor stuff. But again, for the permanent, is about the building and the embedding and the ongoing kind of management or the role that you're performing. So it's different subtleties in the way that they're writing. Okay, so one of the things that I will say to people, and this is just a template that we have that we utilize, because I just think it's one that I've used in my recruiting days going back, because it's just clean, it's just bullet pointed, it's just nicely laid out. Whatever happens to this CV when it gets sent in, formatting doesn't get messed about within databases. It's just a really easy format. But one of the things I'll point that I want to make here is if you're making a change in your career, so if you're moving from being I'm a PMO analyst at the minute, working at the program level, I want to get into portfolio, but I haven't got anything in my CV at the portfolio level yet. You want to be thinking about how you utilize an objective. It's the same if you're making a switch from one sector to another. If you're looking to get into PMO for the first time, if you're looking to move countries, whatever it might be, this is about explaining to people what it is that you're trying to do. This is a really interesting one because it can be utilized in lots of different ways. But the bottom line is that when you're on that side where you're having to look at CVs and somebody applies for something and they're on the other side of the world, because they've shared obviously where they are location wise, I haven't got any clue whether that person is planning on moving to the UK, say, or when they might be doing that, or is it a mistake? Did they not see where the job was? Sometimes just explaining, the obvious thing is to explain. Not everybody will read it, but it's your fighting chance if you're trying to do something different. Yeah, hopefully that will make sense. But an objective is worth its weight in gold. In fact, we had a session not that long ago where somebody's trying to move from one country to the UK and didn't, it's the obvious place to put it because all our experiences in a different country, and actually just explaining the objective that I'm moving to the country in X time. Everybody knows, yeah. Template looks good, but I was once told that I is naturally drawn to the left. In this case, there's a blank space on the left underneath the dates. I've reorganized the formatting of my CV with that advice in mind. Absolutely, Jennifer. I mean, I know people's eyes get drawn to the left. It's one of the things that they say when they're doing website development. It's each or the other thing that it's also giving you that kind of space is white. White spacing, really important in kind of CVs. It's when there's a bit of space to kind of look and where your eyes are at, that also works. So yeah, to the left, people draw their eye there, but equally having a bit of white space also works. Who knows? Do two. Try them, test them. This is exactly what we said right at the beginning. This is a marketing brochure, if nothing else. And what does the marketing team do? They put out A/B testing. Yeah, so work out which one will work the best by responses that you get. I mean, why not? You might add an objective on one of them and not on the other. See what responses you get. It's certainly the whole process of recruitment it feels like a machine sometimes. And sometimes they've got to play that game and try and understand how the machine is going to see what we've got and how we're presenting it and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, there's another example. Maybe go to more to the left. You certainly see those CVs where people put in the left hand, they actually make a left hand margin and put some of their key things. I'm not opposed to those. I think they look okay. So it'll be like a gap on the left hand side, and they'll have key skills, key sectors worked in, key qualifications, they'll just be like a really thin strip on the left hand side. Again, it works for some people, not for others. It's going to be some personal preferences, but just remember, don't crowd it. Yeah, and try and use 2 pages. If you're going over to 1.5, have a think about how you might want to utilize that last half page on the second side, because it's blank. So you might as well go back and think about, well, how can I utilize that half a space? Yeah, so you see that quite a lot, 1.5 pages. Maybe I can probably add some stuff in here that might make it into 2, when it's all nicely, neatly balanced. So you give me some questions, which are fantastic. Let's have a look at what time I've got. We obviously got some questions when we were putting in this session, because you got the option to ask some questions. These were just some of them. I just thought, actually, I'd quite like to see where you want me to go with this. If there's any that are standing out for you, you can hit the number and put it into chat. That'd be fantastic. While you're doing that, we've got a question. 15 years of experience in IT across testing, PMO, pre-sales, project management roles. So a good mixed bag. Just 2 years as PMO and 2 years as a PM. How to optimize my profile for a greater impact? It really does depend on when that experience was. So are we talking, this is where you're getting into one-to-one advice. This is the thing. It's becomes really difficult to give people that advice. If it's more recent, the experience of PMO and PM. Now, if you're going to tell me that PM stuff and PMO stuff were like 5 years ago, we've got a different problem than if it's just a couple of years ago. Yeah. I can't get into it on this call, but that'll be part of the thing is how recent it is. So yeah, probably not the best answer that I can give you, but when it comes to anything, like I've said, how people look at a CV, open it, quick scan at the profile, quick scan at the career history. You obviously need to try and get things in that are more PM and PMO based as the most immediate things that you've been doing. That's the bit that's going to make it, stand out. Number 1 and number 6. Okay, so job and difficulties, tips to find the next job. Ooh, okay, all right. So job hunting difficulties. Okay, I'm just going to list off. This is totally off the top of my head because I didn't know what you're going to go for, so I haven't prepped. But what people find really difficult is that they are not treating it as a full-time job, and also being able to keep a track of stuff, because there'll be a lot of different people that you're talking to. So you need to know where your applications have gone, when they went, who they went to, what the next stages are. Should you be actually chasing people down and finding what the outcome is? Yes, it's really difficult. People will not give you feedback if you've been rejected. That's really, we know that. I hate that about the job. Interestingly, though, if you're working with a recruiter, don't necessarily take it out on them, because often it's the organization that doesn't provide feedback, in which case your recruiter is kind of left with, I don't know why they didn't pick you, because I don't know who they've gone for. So again, it's sometimes behind the scenes, it cannot be as straightforward as you think. It's just people can't be bothered to send you an email. Job hunting difficulties can be about is where to find them. I would certainly say that LinkedIn's just exploded over the last 5 years. That's obviously a place where a lot of people go, and people quite like the idea is that they'll be able to see who you're connected to and whether there are any people in your space and all that kind of stuff. However, job boards have still got their place, but ultimately it's the third way where most people land the right kind of role is through your network. So we've not talked about that at all, but it is totally the best way and the least stressful, but requires a lot of effort throughout your professional career, not just when you're looking for a job. So you need to be cultivating that all the time. People that leave your organization, you keep in touch with them, where they ended up, going to networking events, going to conferences, all of that kind of stuff. Really, really important. So you know what's going on, who's doing what, who's moved to what. Certainly in my role, it's always been about just keeping an eye on who's where, because I'll have somebody, or I know another part of my network that's just looking for a job, and I'll know that those two people should talk. There'll be a lot of people out there that really love doing that. And again, you need to be part of those networks. So what else from a job hunting difficulty would I say? I think a lot of it is actually around the CV and just not really showing everything that needs to be showed about you, for the job that you're going for. And it's trying to look at it in a really objective way. Because a number of times when people used to say to me, like, why have I been rejected for this job? And I just look at it in black and white. And now you can do it on Chat GPT, something that nobody else needs to know about. You can actually say that this is my CV, this is the job. Tell me, Mr. AI, why I shouldn't be employed. And it will tell you. Yeah, and that's all that the recruiters would be doing exactly the same kind of thing. Is that they're used to spotting this kind of stuff, and it might not be obvious when you're looking at your CV because you've been looking at it too much. So that's again one of the problems. And then there's finally, really, from a job hunting difficulty point of view, is sometimes is something that you can't have control of. And that is because the organization that has put that job out there doesn't actually know what they want. So what they've got is a cobbled together job profile of what they think they need based on probably a lot of people's input. And actually, they don't really know what it is. So is that problem then of being able to find out from your point of view, is this the job for me? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't find out until they get to the interview. And if it even worse is that they start in a new job and it's not as it's been sold to you. And I think that's the other thing as well. You need to be conscious of when you look at a job advert or things on LinkedIn, that they should be selling the job for you. Yeah, you should be able to ascertain whether it's going to be the right kind of thing for you. And that's going to come down to whether you have the option to ask questions. Often you can't do that at the CV profile, CV stage, but it's certainly something to consider when you hopefully get into the interview stage. PMO roles are still really misunderstood. How many roles you'll see out there that will say PMO, and then you look at it and think, that's the project manager. Yeah, it's a difficult one, but it is part and parcel of where PMO is and how much it has changed over the last 20 years or so, and the kind of role that it's become. And again, for a lot of organizations, they're still not really got the nuance of what it is that they need in their PMO. And can you request feedback using GDPR rules? I think you can probably, if you really, really wanted to, is probably think about, it depends on where you've got the job interview for, because you could go down the freedom of information. But ultimately, you've got to think about, well, where's the best use of your time? I think you will just get as much useful feedback as using AI, using a friend, using a colleague, than you would from any other, pursuing things down a route. We know it's really, really frustrating. It's the worst part of the whole process. And I wish people would just get better at it and just tell people, this is the reason why we've not considered you. Generally, like I said, 9 times out of 10, the mistake is that it's not clear. It wasn't clear on your CV that you had experience in this, and this is what we were asking for. Yeah. So, that's the thing that I would take away. Okay, I've been chatting a lot now. I think we're 2 minutes away, and I just wanted to just say, like I said, there is help out there. You can get lots of help through a session, a little piece of learning that we have, which is our PMO CV writing. It's just 25 quid plus VAT. And a lot of people have utilized it. It's some of the things we've talked about in here, but essentially what you do, it goes through every single part of the CV, how you should be writing it, what you can be doing to write that. And if you're really stuck, I'm sorry I couldn't get into a personal, I've got this CV, I do it all the time. I'll look at somebody's CV and say, right, okay, I can show you now, you're making a mistake here, 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 here. Let's have a look at that. I do that through some of the coaching stuff that I do for PMO learning. So take a look. I am here. But, CV stuff, please make sure, you consider it. It's a lifelong learning. It's a skill that everybody should have, and how best to represent themselves in writing, how best to represent yourself when you're in the interview. It's one of those core life skills for sure. But anyway, I hope it's been useful. And please do reach out if you need any other help from us. But thanks very much for joining me. Take care. Bye.